This is not Challah, and I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. Challah is Jewish. This is Bavarian. One has eggs for religious reasons. The other is southern Germany's answer to the question, how much butter and eggs can we justify in a bread before it becomes dessert? This is Hefezopf. Hefe means yeast and Zopf means braid. Together it's the most underrated sweet bread in the Western world. We're making this today, from scratch. It's cheaper than a bag of chips and infinitely better than anything in a plastic bag from your grocery store. No, you don't need a class to learn how to braid it. I'll show you in a little bit. It's easy. Let's talk history, because nothing in cooking exists in a vacuum. The braided sweetbread tradition in southern Germany dates back to the Middle Ages and was particularly popular around Easter. The consumption was supposed to bring luck and fertility as well as protect from evil. Plus, it was a very welcome end to the Lent when you were finally allowed to eat something that has decadence written all over it. Over the years, the enriched and unsweetened Hefezopf turned sweeter and became the centerpiece of Kaffee und Kuchen, the sacred German afternoon ritual that happens between 3 and 5 p.m. every day. One more thing before we get started. Cost. 500 grams of flour, some milk, a couple of eggs, butter, sugar, and a packet of yeast. Plus, there's a few little things like a little bit of vanilla extract and a teaspoon of salt. The entire loaf costs somewhere between $3 and $5 to make, depending on where you live, of course. The same loaf at a German bakery, if you can actually find one, runs you at least $12. Also, you probably can't buy a good Hefezopf in most of North America. Which is, frankly, an embarrassment, because you can get excellent Challah and there's only like 7.5 million people of Jewish descent in the US and over 40 million of German descent. So, we have to make our own. Here's what you need for the starter juice, as I call it. 230 milliliters of lukewarm milk, 70 grams of sugar, a packet of yeast, and a little bit of vanilla extract. If you want to feel fancy or you have access to fresh lemons, a little bit of lemon zest goes a long way for an extra zing. Before we cook, we need to talk about the yeast, because if you don't understand what the yeast is doing, you will be confused when things go wrong. And things tend to go wrong occasionally. Yeast is a single-celled fungus, a living organism. It consumes sugar and it produces two things. Carbon dioxide, which is what lets the dough rise, and a small amount of alcohol, which burns off but contributes to the flavor profile. Your job is to avoid killing the yeast. Yeast is a Goldilocks. Too cold and it goes dormant. Too hot and it dies on you. Do it like Mom did. Dab some of that milk on your wrist, and if it hurts, it's too hot. We're going to wake the yeast up. This is why we make the starter first. We give it a little sugary meal and make sure it's alive before we commit 500 grams of flour to it. Into the warm milk goes the yeast. Half of the sugar, the rest goes into the flour. Vanilla extract or vanilla sugar, whichever you have. That contributes to the final flavor. It doesn't really bother the yeast. And then lemon zest if using. You could also mix that into the flour if you want. The zest provides an extra brightness that keeps the bread from tasting like it came out of a cardboard box. Just the yellow part. Use a microplane. There. That should do. Give this a stir to combine. Make sure you dissolve the sugar, that's why we only used half of it. Now we wait. Around 10 minutes. You're waiting for this to get foamy, like a nice layer of foam on the top. That tells you the yeast is active and it's actually eating the sugar. No foam after 15 minutes, either your yeast is dead or your milk was way too hot. At that point, you need to start over with this. Now we build the dough, and yes, we are sifting the flour. I can already hear the objections. Do I have to sift? Yes, you do, and here's why. Flour clumps. It compacts in the bag. When you add compacted flour to any liquid, you get uneven hydration. Pockets of dry flour surrounded by wet dough. Sifting breaks up the clumps, aerates the flour and gives you a much more uniform result. Sifted flour also means less flour per cup if you're using cups. That's why we weigh these things. There, that foam, that's the tiny microorganisms doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So respect them and dump them into your sifted flour. Now take a wooden spoon and just start combining this a little. It's a rough, shaggy mass, but we're not done yet. Now the butter, room temperature, soft, not melted. Melted butter will change the structure, you don't want that. If you forgot to take it out, 15 seconds in the microwave will do the trick. Keep combining. Now the eggs and the 5 grams of salt. Plus we still have the remainder of the sugar sitting here, so that goes in too. It's not getting any prettier. Mix until everything is nicely incorporated. You go through this phase where it looks like a disaster. That's okay though. Now 10 minutes of kneading. Don't skip this step. Let me explain why this isn't optional. This flour contains proteins. When those proteins get wet and you knead them, they link together into long chains called gluten. Think of gluten as the scaffolding in your dough. That scaffolding is what traps the CO2 that the yeast produces. No gluten, no bubbles trapped, no rise. You have several options to knead this. 10 minutes in a stand mixer, 12 to 15 if you're doing it by hand and you really want a workout. I've prepared my stand mixer behind me, so into the stand mixer bowl it goes. Ten minutes have passed. Let's see where we stand. How do you know you're done kneading? The window pane test. Take a small piece of the dough and try to stretch it out. More and more and more. See how translucent this is? That's why it's called window pane test. You can almost see through. Gluten is fully developed. Now it needs to ferment. Put it in a bowl, cover it, and put it someplace warm. Your oven with just the light on will work perfectly. My oven has a bread proofing function, so I'm going to use that. Leave it there for about an hour or until the dough has at least doubled. In the meantime, go do something useful. Read a book, call your mother, or have a drink and chat with your family if it's that time of day. Real quick, if you're finding this useful and you don't want to miss what's coming next, hit subscribe, click the bell icon, and give this video a like before you call your mother, because we all know that's gonna take a while. I think the dough has more than doubled. Let's braid. Knock out most of the gas. Scrape it out of the bowl. And give it a quick knead for a minute or two. A nice fold will do too. 930 grams. So we would need 310 grams each. Nice. Now roll each of the portions into a rope, and if the dough resists, just let it rest for a minute and it will stop resisting. You want about an inch thick. Line these guys up, and this is where most people make a mistake that produces uneven ends. People start braiding at the end. Don't do that. Start somewhere from the middle. The outer always goes over the center. And then the other side again goes over the center. Next one, next one, next one, next one, next one. And there's the end. Tuck it in a little. And now turn this around. Now on the other side, you gotta tuck it under. Otherwise it doesn't work. Take the outer strand, tuck it under the center strand. Outer, under the center strand. Under, 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 and there you are. This is one of those techniques that sounds overly complicated, but if you've done one or two, you'll see that the ends are so much nicer that way. Onto a parchment-lined baking sheet it goes. I'm using one of these silicone baking mats. That's the sustainable option. Cover with a clean kitchen towel or a baker's cush. And let it do its final rest. About an hour. In the meantime, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius. The second rise is important. The yeast is producing more gas. The gluten network is relaxing and expanding. It will look a lot puffier afterwards. The loaf has risen. Quite a bit, I must say. Before it goes in, the egg wash. Egg yolk, not the whole egg. The yolk contains fat and protein, and that gives you a really nice brown crust. A whole egg wash is lighter. This gives you a much darker crust. Normally we would come to the topping at this point, which traditionally is Hagelzucker or pearl sugar as it's called in English. That, however, is very hard to find in the US. The alternative is to use almonds, or a combination of both. I approve of that. However, there's a third option, and that's a sugar glaze, and sugar glaze is easy to make. You just can't apply it at this time. We'll add the topping about 10 minutes before the bake is done. Into the oven this goes, and there's a technique you gotta pay attention. We preheated the oven to 400 degrees. The moment you pop this in, you reduce the temperature to 340. Why? Because in the first 10 minutes or so, oven spring happens. The yeast goes into overdrive from the sudden heat, produces a huge amount of CO2, and then dies. The dough expands rapidly. If you leave this at 400 degrees, the crust will set and the dough cannot expand. 35 to 40 minutes. While the loaf is baking, let's start on the Zuckerguss, so we got that ready when we need it. It's really simple. It's a cup of powdered sugar and plain water. Add the water in small increments so you get the consistency right. A squeeze bottle works really well for this. Right now, it's quite solid, but we're almost there. In case you overshoot with the water, just add a little bit more sugar. I think this consistency is good. 10 minutes before the loaf is done, quickly pull it out and brush the sugar on and sprinkle some of the almonds on it. I could have used a little bit more egg on it, but it's quite pretty. If you want, sprinkle a few almonds. They should stick on the sugar. And back into the oven it goes. Before we cut it, we need to let it cool, and we want to determine whether it's done. The traditional knock test for breads probably doesn't work on a bread that's soft. So, in order to determine whether it's fully cooked or not, we rely on good old technology again. Instant read thermometer. You go in one of those crevices so you don't see the hole, and you measure. If the core temperature on the inside is between 190 and 200 degrees, it's fully cooked. The other way to determine whether it's fully cooked is the same test you would do on a banana bread or anything like that. Use a toothpick or a wooden skewer, poke it in, and if there's no residue when you pull it out, it's cooked. Now, let this cool completely. I know it's agonizing. It will take at least half an hour. It's been 30 minutes. I've been watching the entire time. Let's cut it. And this is my preferred way to eat it. Still slightly warm and an obscene amount of butter on it. Of course, it's unsalted butter. Now, this goes perfectly with coffee, and you can even dip it if you want. Make it Saturday morning, let it rise while you read the paper, bake it before lunch, and have it with a coffee in the afternoon.